Hello and welcome to this episode of Studio Tech. This is part 2 of our series looking at the TriCaster 40 from NewTek. The TriCaster is a device that NewTek describe as being a studio in a box. It allows you to switch video and audio sources locally and provide an output for a live event. It also allows you to record to hard disk, and it also allows you to stream. So they are the three things that comes from Tri in TriCaster. In part 1, we looked at the connections on the front and rear panel of the TriCaster system unit and talked about how you would interface various devices, the cameras and computers. In this part 2, we're going to look at the software interface, the graphical user interface, and talk about how you configure the TriCaster ready for your production. We're going to use the example of a video podcast in our production. So in part 3, we will be producing a very simple video podcast using the various sources that we have identified and also adding things like some simple lower thirds titles. At the end of part 1, we said that we would wire the TriCaster 40 up, and that's now what we have done. So if we look at the front panel of the TriCaster, you can see that on the left-hand side, we have connected 3 of the 4 inputs. The first input is a high-definition component input coming from a video camera. One of the cameras is mounted just over to the left of the system unit. The second input is a composite standard definition signal coming from another camera. The third input is coming from the video converters that we talked about in part 1. This is an HDMI to component video converter, and that is connected to the HDMI output on a MacBook Pro. So they're the 3 inputs, and then from an audio perspective, we have just connected an output from our audio mixer, just providing left and right audio inputs. We mentioned in part 1, we're not going to focus very much at all on the audio. For any type of production, we would recommend that the audio is really mixed on can be a very simple and very reasonably priced separate audio mixer, and then you feed the output into the TriCaster. We're using our studio mixer here, and are not going to cover very much at all about audio, apart from just showing you the audio capabilities very quickly on the TriCaster. So let's now take it to the next stage and look at the graphical user interface that appears when you start up the TriCaster. A point to note is the very first time you start up the TriCaster, it does go through some registration screens. That has already been done and only has to be done once when you first use the TriCaster. On the left-hand side are some icons, and depending which icon is selected, it gives you various options on the right-hand side. So if we click on Shutdown, you can see that it now gives us 3 options, which is restart the TriCaster, shut it down, or go to administrator mode. And we'll have a very quick look at that now. This has, as you would expect, a variety of administration functions and allows you to do most things that you might need to do on the TriCaster. It is worth pointing out that NewTek recommend that you do not install any additional software on the TriCaster, and if you do install additional software, the TriCaster now comes up with a warning saying that additional software has been installed. But what this does do is allow you to do things like defragment the drives, or change some of the settings, change the date and time, configure the network. Also allows you to exit to Windows should you want to. And if you actually select that, it does say and remind you that TriCaster is a real-time processing device, and installing any software device drivers, updates, or changing any computer configuration settings are likely to cause performance and stability problems. So it really is advising that you don't go through to Windows. But if you hit the exit to Windows button, then you do go into the normal Windows desktop. But just by clicking on the TriCaster icon, it comes back into administration mode. We're now going to go back to the TriCaster. So that was a shutdown that we looked at. The next one is help, and that has some various information about the system. Next is add-ons. There are add-ons that you can purchase from NewTek. That includes the virtual set editor, a demo version of which is installed on this system. And they also do a product called Live Text for titling, which is available. The next option is open, and that allows you to open any existing sessions, and we'll talk about sessions in a minute, but we're going to go back to new and to create a new session. So what is a session? A session is the settings for your particular show that you're doing. So let's say you have 3 events or shows that you do on a regular basis. One might be a video podcast for a particular subject. Let's just pick something on lathes, and you have a whole set of subtitles and photographs and various settings for that podcast. Then, of course, you might do a second podcast which is based on drilling machines, and you want a whole different set of titles, and this allows you to configure different sessions so that all your settings are saved. So if you switch to one session, you know that all the images that you loaded, that the lower thirds that you loaded, are available for that particular session. So it is a way of creating different sets of configuration information for different podcast shows, live events that you might do. So back to the screen, and it gives you the opportunity of entering a session name. So we're going to call this the TC40 demo podcast. What volume you want it on. Now on the TriCaster 40 there is only one volume available, which is the D drive. The video standard. Now again, this is worth making a point about video standards. The TriCaster, all models of the TriCaster actually come in 2 models, and some people don't realize this. The base model is an NTSC only model, which is designed primarily for use in the United States and a few other countries who use NTSC. If you do not live in those countries, the model that is available to you from NewTek is normally the multi-standard model, which not only supports NTSC but supports PAL. And there is a price difference, and it is worth checking if you are buying a TriCaster which model it is, depending on what you need. So in Europe here, so in the UK, we obviously use PAL as a video format, and so this model that we have here is the multi-standard version of the TriCaster. Back to the control screen. So we're going to select PAL, and we're going to configure this as a 1080i resolution. You have the opportunity of 1080i 720p and some 576 for us standard definition sessions. And then we are going to start the session. Then gives you another 2 options. One is just manage. This is the ability to import and browse clips and stills, titles and music. But we're just going to go straight to the live session, and we're going to say start live production. The TriCaster then just takes a few seconds to load all the configuration, and normally within about 30 seconds it is ready for you to use. Now remember that if you had a save session, it would all be configured as you last left it. This is coming up in a brand new session for us, so we're going to have to spend a little bit of time configuring it, and that's what we're going to do now. So looking at the session, you can see that in the top left quadrant of the screen there are 9 little windows. These are your live inputs, and you can see that in one input in the top left hand side, if I wave at the camera, you can see that we have only one input showing, and that's because this is the only input that is in 1080i. The others are actually coming in different formats, and we have to configure it. So camera 2, if you remember, was a composite video input, and if you go and click on the little wheel on camera 2, it comes up with a configuration menu, and there is a connection type drop down, and you just select that, and we're going to go down to 576i 16:9 composite, and click on that, and there our camera has appeared. Now, just for a quick wave my hand in front, you might be able to say it's pointing at a rather dark bookcase at the moment. We'll close that. So there we have 2 of our inputs, and the third input is our laptop, and this is actually configured output as 720p. So we're going to go down and select 720p component, and you can see that we now have the laptop screen. That's actually showing the Skype screen. If I just quit from that, then you can see we now have our 3 inputs. So we'll close that. If we now were to exit the session, and we'll just quickly show that. So go up to the top right, click on the cross, and it says, do you sure you want to exit? Then it's exiting out of the session. That comes out very quickly, and all that information has now been saved, along with any other information that we were to add, such as lower thirds or stills. So we go back to the control screen now, and we go back to the very beginning. You can see that our session, the TC40 demo podcast, is there. So we just click on that, and we just click straight on Start Live Production, and in a few seconds that session and that configuration will be loaded, and you can see that very quickly our 3 inputs are now showing. So that's how you configure the camera inputs. There are a couple of other inputs that we haven't mentioned so far, and these are network inputs. This allows you to connect to other devices over the Ethernet network. NewTek supply a little utility for both Mac and Windows that you can run on a separate PC connected to your local network, and that allows you to mirror the display to the TriCaster, and it appears on the net inputs. So you can capture 2 screens and have them showing. This is useful if you wanted to show a web page. Some people do use it for video, and you need to try that to see if you think it is good enough. For fast-moving video, our view is that it really isn't good enough, but some people do have some good success. We do use it every week on our main TriCaster for showing web pages from various guests' laptops. So we have IVGA running on a Mac here in the studio, and if we now switch to the control screen and we go to one of the net inputs and just click on the little drop down, you can see that it is now showing under receive a machine, and if we click on it, there it appears. So we have now configured 4 inputs. So these are the 9 live sessions. There we've got a couple of networks, and the other remaining are the DDR, which is like your video recorder for playing back videos, and there are two graphics inputs which allow you, as you would expect, to show graphics, to show still images, or to show things like lower thirds. We'll come back to those in a few minutes. Now, the top right of the screen is divided into two windows. The window on the left is the preview screen, and the window on the right is the program screen. So whatever is on the program screen is your output. That'll be what you are streaming, or what you are recording, or what you're sending, for example, to the HDMI output for going to a monitor or projector at the venue that you're in. Preview shows you what is going to be going to live or going to program next. So if using the mouse control, I'm just going to go and click on camera 3, just a single click. That now appears in preview. And if we wanted to cut between the website that we're showing and the computer, we can just go down to just below the preview window, and we can click on the take button, and you'll see that they instantly switch between the two. So these controls here, this software T-bar and these buttons, allow you to action the changes between preview and program. Take is instant, so every time I hit the take bar, it instantly switches between the two. If I hit auto, you can see it's actually, in this case, doing a fade, and the timing of that fade is controlled over here to the right hand side, and this is on the bottom of these three rows of controls. And the time, if I hover over where it says 0100, which is 1 second, and I move the mouse to the right, I've now taken it to just over 4 seconds. And if we now click the auto button, it now takes 4 seconds to do that fade between the program and preview. In live production, you would always do a take. Using effects or using a fade is normally to signify the passing of time or something special is happening. So in a live production, you would normally just click on the take button. But if you do want to use some various effects, you can set up the effects on this row here, and just by clicking on them, you can select different effects. A whole selection of effects are available come with the TriCaster. I'll take this time down to 2 seconds, and if I now do an auto, you can see it does a sort of a cloud, and we'll try this one. I'm not sure what that one did particularly, but there are a whole set of different transitions that you can use. 99% of the time, and most people will just use a cut or a take to switch between, and you would use a fade occasionally if you were fading in something that was done previously, just to show that there was a passage of time. Now, above this bottom row, which is labeled background, there are two rows called DSK1 and DSK2, and these are downstream keyers. So what you have to do is to imagine that there are 3 levels of video, and you can put the downstream keyers on top of the main or the background layer of video. And they are stacked in the appropriate order. So whatever is at the top is on top of what is below it. So downstream keyer 2 is at the top, and that will appear on top of downstream keyer 1 and on top of background. And that's important if you have bugs or lower thirds. And if you engage both of your downstream keyers, you want to ensure that you want to know which is the priority one and which has priority on the video. And we can demonstrate that now. You normally use a downstream keyer for applying bugs, which are sort of little things you might have in the top right hand corner, which might be your channel name, or it might be previously recorded, could be the television station's ident, or for doing things like lower thirds across the bottom. So they are titles that you see across the bottom of the screen. So you don't normally use downstream keyers for switching the whole of the video stream. They're for applying graphics on top of your main production. Let's just look at the TriCaster control screen again. And in the bottom right corner, there are 3 tabs. They're labeled Graphics 1, Graphics 2, and Audio Mixer. We're going to look at Graphics 1, and we're going to go down and click on the Add button, and we will look at the stills here, and we're going to find a bug. And let's see, there are some bugs from NewTek. So here we are, TC powered 16:9 bug. So I'm now going to put that into Graphics 1. I'm now going to go to Graphics 2, and I'm going to add a titles, go to titles, and there are a lot of different titles available here. Let's just go and pick a lower third title. That one looks reasonable. So now in our graphics tabs, we have a bug in Graphics 1 and a title in Graphics 2. So Graphics 1, if we look at the DSK, you can see that the DSK 1 is selected to Graphics 2. You can select what is going to go to that downstream keyer, and you can select all the video inputs, but we are going to put it on to Graphics 1, and the DSK2 we're going to put onto Graphics 2. So when we engage DSK1, then this image, because it is selected, will appear. So I'm just going to do a take now, and you can see that that NewTek bug has appeared on top of the background layer. Now, if you want to move it, that isn't a particularly good position, because if we go and we engage Graphics 2, which has that lower third in, you can see that that is now going over the top of our little bug. So we'll take that off, and if you go over to these sort of cross arrows on the right hand side of DSK1, you can, by hovering over the arrows there, you can move, by just moving the mouse, you can move the bug around. So we'll move that over to the top left of the screen and close that. And now if we were to engage DSK2, then we have got both images, so both downstream keyers are on and layered over the top of the image. So that's very quickly is how you would set up images. You can go down, you can add stills. Let's see, I think they've got some pictures here. So by holding the shift button down, you can select multiple stills and you can load them in. And you wouldn't put stills into a DSK. So if I now click on a different still, you can see over in the top left-hand corner of the program window, because we had moved it, we're just getting the lower right-hand corner of it. But that's not how you would show stills. You would, if you wanted to show this still, you would have to turn off the DSK, and you would go to your look at the graphics bin over graphics screen or input in the top left. You would then select the picture that you wanted to show, and it's in preview because we did a single click on the image there and pressing take, and that would go straight to output with, of course, the downstream keyer still on it, and you'd have to remember to take off the downstream keyer. That was a very quick run through, and it really takes time to get your head around how you set up the downstream keyers, and it is an area that you need to play with, but it's a very powerful feature. And what you need to ensure is that you switch them on or off appropriately as you are wanting to switch between showing a bug or showing a lower third or showing an image. The other tab at the lower right that we clicked on was audio. These are the audio levels. On the left-hand side, you've got audio levels for audio 1. That is the input that on the front of the TriCaster unit. And if we take that input up, you will see that as I talk, you can see the audio levels going up and down. So that is the feed from the mixer that we talked about earlier. And on the right-hand side are your two outputs, which is the stream audio level and your master output, which would either be on the front of the TriCaster or your master going to your recording. And the ability to have additional audio inputs within the TriCaster is there. You can capture audio from suitably equipped network inputs, or for the DDRs, the video disc player we'll come to, you can control the audio, and you can actually load audio clips into the graphics tab. So if you wanted to play sound effects, you would control the audio levels there. And as well as appearing at the in this tab, we look up at the program screen, you can see that audio now appears on the left-hand side of that. And if we turn down, I turn down the master output, and you can see that it's no longer appearing on the screen, on the program screen. It is the master audio output that appears on the program screen. We'll move over to the left-hand side center of the screen, and this is a emulation of a control surface. And this allows you, just by using the mouse, to, on the bottom row, to take inputs straight to preview. So if I was to click on input 1 here, you can see that I go, there we are, straight to preview. Input 2 goes straight to preview, or 3. So this allows you to queue up in a different way. It is the same as clicking once in the relevant window, but it's a much more formal and more controlled way, and does avoid you making mistakes. So if I now wanted to, let's say we wanted to take the computer input, which is 3, so I would click on 3. 3 is now on preview, and I would just go over and I would click the take button, and what was in preview is now in program, and what was in program is now in preview. And I could queue up the next shot, which might be net 1. And so I go and put that into preview, and then I would just go and click on the take button again, and just take that. So these buttons, the bottom row puts things into preview, the middle row puts things straight into program. So if you very quickly wanted to switch to, let's say, graphics 1, then you would just go and click on graphics 1, and it would take it straight to the program. There's another row which is for effects, and we're not going to touch on that. That's something that once you've got your head around the rest of the TriCaster operation, that you can look at. Though we will mention it very briefly in our virtual inputs, because on the right hand side here you can see that there are buttons for the virtual inputs. And you configure those virtual inputs by these tabs in the lower left, which V1, V2, V3 and V4. And we're very quickly going to configure a virtual input. We're going to put virtual 1 into preview, and we have the default here is you can see is A over B. So this is very useful when you want to put a picture in picture. If we have a Skype guest joining and he is talking about a web page, for example, you might want to put his image up in the top corner of the output while he is talking about the website. Or if you have multiple guests, you might want to put them side by side, and you do that within a virtual input. So we're very quickly going to configure a virtual input, and this is virtual input 1. We're going to do an A over B. So we'll say that my input, which is A, you can see is selected there. Input 1 is A, and B is going to be, we'll say the MacBook. Now, obviously in program, you can see that it's just A because it's obviously a full-size picture over a full-size picture. We go and click on the cross arrows on the end and then hover over the magnifying glass and then move the mouse. You can see there in the preview that window is shrinking. So we'll put it to there, and then I hover over the positioning crossbars and I can move it to the middle. And that might be, as you want it, or we could go and position the other input, the laptop input, and again, if I size that to there and move it there, so you might want to do something like that. That's the way that you can have the inputs side by side. There are lots of options on the inputs. You click on the settings wheel by where it says default A over B. You can go and look at all the different virtual sets. This is where the virtual sets come in. Obviously, you need to be chroma keying for that. We don't have a green background set up at the moment, but that is all the settings for the virtual inputs. Virtual inputs are very powerful and allow you to do some very clever things. So that is the main control surface and the various inputs. And I hope that has given you a good understanding of how you configure the TriCaster. There are just 3 things that we haven't looked at, and that is recording, streaming, and screen grab. So we're just very quickly going to look at those now. And these buttons are underneath the program and preview windows. And next to each is a settings wheel. So we'll click on against record. And this allows you to select the encoding. The choices are just QuickTime or H.264. We're going to leave it at QuickTime. The source is program, though you can get it to select it to just record a camera, but you would normally leave that on program. There is an audio headroom. We're not going to go into that. Quite a few people reduce this to 12 dB or 9 dB. The default in the US should be 20 dB. In Europe, it should be 18 dB. Other people play around with this, and what this does is to put in a little bit of a buffer in the audio so that you don't clip your audio. Allows you to put in a name, and let's just call this TC40 test. And there's another button here that allows a tick box allows you to add the video to the DDR playlist when you have finished recording it. So we will close that now. And if I hit the record button, it goes orange background, and there is a counter against it telling you how long you have been recording for. And if I now stop recording, in the lower left you can see that video has appeared, and I can now play it back, because the other thing that we hadn't covered actually was the DDR. So this is now a video clip sitting in our DDR, and you can see that has appeared as an input. And if I was to play this, it would play back. Worth just looking at the DDR window. There are a couple of tick boxes available, selection boxes. One is whether you want to play singles or whether you want autoplay. We normally have autoplay on and single. There's also a loop button should you want to loop it. So what this will do, now that autoplay is on, we've got it in preview, and if we were to, let me just put something straight into program so it's not confusing. So this video is now lined up in the preview window. And if we were to now do a take, it now switches to the program. And it's only of a still image, but it is actually playing. You can look at the bottom of the screen. You can see that there's a red bar. It goes to red when it's less than 5 seconds. It plays, and then it switches back to whatever was the previous source. What I'm going to do is just to very quickly add a demo clip from the NewTek library. There's a nice one here of a hot air balloon. So that is now in preview. And if I do a take, it switches to program, it plays, it's counting down here 7 seconds. When it gets to 5, the bar goes red. So you know you're within 5 seconds. And then when it gets to the end, it switches back to the camera. So that's how you set up record. Just a very quick look at stream. If we click on the settings icon next to stream, it comes up and allows you to select most of the popular providers, such as BitGravity that we use, and you can choose from Justin or Stickam, Ustream, Watershed. I'm not going to go through how you configure it, but what is very useful is a web screen does appear, allowing you to log on to your provider. So if you need to get various bits of configuration information, addresses that you have to point the software to, you can log on and get those directly from the website rather than having to get them on a bit of paper and then type them all in, because they can be a little bit complicated. So you set up your streaming in there, and we'll just close that window. And when you have it all set up, if you hit stream, it'll go yellow, and it'll come back and give you an error if it doesn't work properly. And the last option there is grab, and these are screen grabs. You may come across during your recording something you'd like to take a picture of. So let's say I wanted to, let's just do the configurations first. The base name, and I'm going to add to graphics to player, so close. So anytime I do a grab, it's going to add it to the graphics to player, which is down here. So if I look at the camera and then I press the button, it is now a still image. And if I wanted to, so that you can see now is in graphics 2 because it's selected. And if I put graphics 2 into preview, I'm not sure it's a particularly wonderful picture, but I can now do a take, and that has taken that image, that still image, to the program output. So what, we've covered an awful lot in a very short period of time. I do hope that you have found it useful. So that's all the basic settings on how you set up a TC40 ready for your show. So we have talked about how you configure the cameras, how you can get lower thirds and bugs, how you can put in recordings, save recordings into the DDR, how you can use the DDR to play back videos. So all the basics are there now for a production. And in part 3, that's what we're going to do. We're going to load up some videos, and we're going to take you through using the machine as in a live environment for recording a very short demo podcast. And we'll also look at the using the control surface for that, as well as using the on-screen controls. Thanks for watching.